Hey everybody, my name's Dustkey and I'm gonna show you a breakdown of my remix for the Glimmer track by Inmost and Lucy Kitchen. The project looks like this and I'll show you a quick clip to show you what it sounds like right now. Right, so the first thing I always tend to do when starting a project, in this case a remix, I tend to approach remixes a little differently than most standard projects, because I always start with like a musical idea. So essentially the very first thing I did when starting this remix project is I made this little giddy. And this little giddy over here. And I tend to work, personally I tend to work best from starting from a melodic atmosphere and building a vibe next to that. It's very good to lay the foundations early, the drums and the bass. But for me that only gets reference in a track once you have the melodical components down, so you know where you can go with your vibe in general. And for me, melodic vibes are very important. So I started to play around with the vocal because, well, obviously Lucy Kitchen is something that you want to give a lot of presence in your track. Great vocals here. So I grabbed the vocal.
Baby, you know that I've been anxious. I've been losing sleep.
I think I did my usual overdoing of reverb on there somewhere and adding a bit of slight EQ, but yeah, there's just a lot of reverb on there. I wanted to make this track very dreamy. Yeah, so without the reverb.
Baby, you know that I've been anxious. I've been losing sleep.
Right, like she's floating around in space. That's usually how I like to do it. It's way too much, I know. It's a lot, but I love it. So what I did is first I took a look at the original chord structure, which goes a bit like this. So it's written in C, which is very nice. Because that makes it kind of that gives it a lot of ground to quickly write melodies on top of it, because you don't have to worry too much about semitone stepping for the black keys. So I grabbed the vocal and I did a bit of musical searching with it on the piano next to it.
Baby, you know that I've been anxious. I've been losing sleep.
That's usually how I start with a remix or something like an idea. So what I did for the remix here is I started at C and I went up. And I basically approached it like that. And at a certain time I went up and up and up and up. And I didn't want to just keep repeating the process, so I added like a little bit of spice there, just to keep the progression a bit interesting. And then of course it gets back to the drop, where you have the classic moving down, and that's what you hear over here. Oh, let's mute the drums and the bass first.
Like a rock, if you hold it up in the
Yeah, so that's how I approached the general gist of the remix. So I started out with making a bit of atmosphere there, and the very first thing I conceptualized was making this breakdown.
Baby, you know that I've been anxious. I've been losing sleep.
So I grabbed the piano here, which, yeah. Alright, so that's me showing off a little bit. I grabbed a piano called Old Lady. I think it's from, it's a pack I bought somewhere. This is like a contact instrument. I grabbed it. Let's see. So for this one I went a bit high passy. Obviously a lot of reverb again, and I chopped off the heavy attack peaks with the compressor, so it sounded a bit more mellow. And I also had a low pass layer over here, which essentially does the same, but I didn't have any reverb on this. So if you want to drown your instruments in reverb, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure that when you have a lower frequency instrument, you don't do it over there as well, because that can create a lot of messy, muddy, atmospheric guff, essentially. See, in highs, you can essentially drown those out a bit more, but when you put them together like this, so notice how your piano can then really create its own atmosphere background while the lows are still kind of solid in the track. Let's see, I also grabbed a lot of elements from the original track here. I don't like making a remix which just kind of builds everything from the previous compositional idea, but I also don't like it when a remix doesn't have any elements at all anymore from the original track. So I took let's see what I took. I took these two, which is the little piano thing, and I think I also took some ambience here. This plug is very nice. So that's, I did a lot with that. I also grabbed some vocal effects, but when you combine that together,
Wishing I could sleep. Following the moon. Trying to find some peace.
that creates this very nice, just a very nice building atmosphere. It's always nice to use. I obviously throw in some risers here and there, like just kind of copy and paste stuff, you know. It's just for building, but it's way cooler to use the actual track elements for that as well. So I kind of grabbed the grainy plug and the build-up piano here, and I use that. And the volume on that builds a lot. So that's what I kind of used to, see, I made this lower, I made this higher, and then this one here as well. I don't think I had much automation on there, but I used that to build up the energy for the drop there. And I also really like my long intros, so I wanted this to be a kind of dreamy presence. So what usually you just have a few bars for the DJ to mix the highs in, and then come to a drop breakdown. And that's fine, but I tended to go a step further here, and I had a bit of, so first of all I had the heads here. Started with some violins. And I did my best to insert a lot of musical ideas in the build-up, and work it so that it doesn't just, it's not just padding of the track. It should actually add to it a little bit, and the result is that when you build this, all the way up to the breakdown, it actually it's already has done a great job of setting the mood for the rest of the track. So for the hi-hats, you know, I had this kind of heartbeat like idea for the kicks, so I did that. Nothing too spicy, just high-passed kicks over here. And I build up the highs a bit, so it starts kind of tame. I think I used the Blue Mark 10 sample pack thing, and I kept the transients rising up and up and up. So the transient shaping over here is actually fairly dim. So it chops everything up immediately, and then it gets a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. I think I also automated some reverb on here, so it actually builds more and more of an atmosphere there as well. And then I slowly layered in some rides here, you can see. Just basic stuff. And then as well, near the end here, which is a subtle touch, is that I had a shaker. And it just gives this very last element of energy rising there. And for the musical elements, so first of all I had a bit of a fade in here. So that's how it starts, and then you immediately hear the violin chops, which is, I think, just it's just an Ableton stock instrument. And it just plays quints, so that's nice. Reverb, a lot of it. I have an octave element here, as well as layering that with a faded in different element. I think this is also a Ableton stock thing. Yeah. But when you layer those together, it just sounds very nice. And then I have the mullets here. Yeah, so that's like a pretty neat concept here. Xylophone. I think this is an Ableton stock xylophone. Contact xylophone. I tend to get most of my instruments from Contact and just Ableton itself, but what I then do to kind of make it my own is I layer a lot of it. So I almost never have an instrument solo. See, this is like a little pluck from Hybrid Keys. It's pretty cool, and when you layer it all together, you notice how the xylophone has a lot of the timbre, so the high-end plucks, where Contact does a great job of filling up that presence in the higher mids. So together they're essentially a great team. One for the clarity and one for a bit of the body. What's this? Ah yeah, this is like I think a very basic. This is a machine instrument. This is a very nice organ preset on the Machine VST, which I used to own, but not anymore. But they still have some cool instruments in here, so I tend to use them still. And they just add a nice layer on top of this. And I just did a bit of plinging to get this. I I think it's called polymetering, where you have a little musical loop which is not as long as your grid, so it creates nicer movement. So it's a bit longer than 4 counts, which adds movement there, because all of the musical elements try to kind of combine and tell their own tiny story, but also work towards the whole. And all of them support the piano playing here as well. Which is just some nice stuff. Adding some chords in there. And you layer all of that off with some ambient work here. I think most of this is from the original track. Yeah. And then you enter the breakdown with the vocal, the piano, and the way I structure my pianos is I usually play a bit in. I record the MIDI, and then I go afterwards and I fix some of the wrong notes. I leave a bit of the human playability in there, so it sounds. So it's not all on grid, and it sounds played in because it is, but I did fix it, so. It's not, I'm not that good of a pianist, I'm pretty average, but I can fix it in post, so no problem there. And it's a nice melody. So then I had that down, and I was kind of searching for tracks for drums and bass on there, and I was working on a different project which wasn't going so well. But I really liked the groundwork I did for that on the bass and the drums, so I grabbed that. And it's very rolly and a lot of white noise there, big punch, but most of all a lot of movements, I thought. So this is heavy kick with some shaping, some camel crushing. I tend to grab the kicks, I chop them off a bit, try to warp them, and then I bounce them back into it again. I think this is from PAX as well. I think I have the same, oh, this is from a break. I have the same kick, one in the lower regions and one a bit higher for the body. I tend to always use one kick for the sub 100 Hertz regions and some other kicks for filling it up above. And I also have this one for the intro, which is just the second kick, but different. So you have this here. So that creates a lot of nice movement there. I have the snares, let's see how those sound. Just powerful rim shots over there, not much to. This is a Duff. This is just a very nice mid peak, and then I complemented that with yeah, I think this is the main body of the snare. I don't tend to analyze that much within the individual samples themselves. It's more important how you check them out next to each other. Let's see, where goes my break coming from? Yeah, so this is kind of a chopped up Amen. I think it's from a pack as well. Yeah, but I chopped it up, I warped it a bit, I formatted it, chopped off the last section there, and layered it with the do break, which I chopped up a bit as well, warped it, pitched it, made it fit together nicely. So then you have that, and you need to fill that up with a whole bunch of high end, of course, which is just a process of layering. One hat here, one hat there. What is this? Does it not even have a sound? Oh. Or do I just forget something over here? Alright, I muted it. So that's that. Tactical break. I freeze that. Compressed it. Chopped off a lot of attack here. For most of my high-end breaks I don't want too much punching through. Definitely not in the mids. So that's why I chop off a lot there. See, this is pretty powerful stuff, but I don't want it to interfere with the main transients over there. Just a nice ride. Every now and again, I don't know if I did it here, but every now and again I tend to just shift the microtone of one pitch a bit down. Just subtle touches to create a bit more authenticity. So it doesn't sound like the same ride, but actually the same two rides now. It's a tiny thing. I tend to find that all of those tiny things add up to a nicer end product. And this is this slides up as well to here. Just a ride layer, and yeah, all of those together sound high energy, quick moving. A lot of power from the drums in this track is the high end, so that's what you get out of that. And then in the later sections, I played around with the breaks and which shaker you drop, which shaker you're keeping, so you get a bit of a different energy. So I dropped this very high energy ride here. I put it in there. And then over here, I think I also added a shaker. Yeah. Yeah, so that's just another shaker there. It's tiny, it's a bit of a shift, but it creates a nice bit of progression. So then when you have this section here and you have it a bit less, and then you build it up again here, and then you can go back to your main starting break frame with the very open hi-hats again. So that creates a very nice tiny little progression story where I start with the drum break here, I shift it away a bit, I leave out a little bit of energy, and then I build back up to here. So there's just one drop, there's no breakdown or anything, because I thought this was a little bit of nice musical storytelling in and of itself. And I also overdid it a bit with the intro and the outro, so it might have been very long if I had to build two drops out of this. So, right, let's continue to the bass. I think the sub is fairly standard, just a sine wave with some distortion here and there. What I find is most important in my bass work these days is just not even the sound design itself, because I don't tend to be that creative in sound design, especially for basses. I'm not a great. You'll never hear me make decent neuro or anything else. But I tend to work out what kind of compositional notes fit best, and what always works nice for me is just making sure that your bass is not playing constantly. So you have little breaks like here and here. And it jumps up there to create a bit of movement there. As well as here in the later section where it shifts the note up. Where it hits a lot of higher frequencies. And then sometimes I play around with the melody a bit, where I jump ahead at that, leave a bit of progression going in there, little tiny hints for people to pick up. So yeah, it follows the main progression. I have a very hefty noise layer on this. It's a lot. It's just the same wave, and then I high passed it all the way and I saturated it to absolutely everywhere. So That's a lot of white noise. It does pay off in the end, but if you hear the bass on itself, it's a lot of white noise. You can hear it. But when you combine it with the drums and the rest, it works to really add a lot of energy. So please don't judge that by itself. Let's see. Right, so this is an awful lot of processing, but yeah, in the end, I think it's just 2 triangle waves over here, saw waves, nothing too spicy. I did a lot of detuning here for the coloring of the 2 sines. I detuned it a little bit, but just grab 2 sine waves, fill the unison up, detune it a little bit. That's your movement right there. Low pass that filter, and then after that, it's just a process of now I saturate it, then I chop off some frequencies again. I add a very, very tiny amount of reverb, I think. Just, oh, it is pretty heavy. What happened with this? Did I do something with this? I'm not even sure. I think I left that off. Maybe that's just a residue of sound design that I never threw away there, but it's fine. I tend to be pretty messy in here. And then I low pass that again because you have a lot of high frequencies. Then I added a bit of, see, this is nice. Added a bit of corpus body to that. That's just Ableton Magic working there. I couldn't tell you what this does. It's you play around with cool stuff. I could have done a bit more research here, I guess, to tell you what it does, but you know, if it works, it works. It's nice. It doesn't mess with the sound too much, and it creates a nicer sound to it. Saturated that again. Always saturate. Chop it off again. Image it. I did a little bit of widening there, a bit more present. Then I think this is for automation purposes, or maybe not. It used to be for automation purposes. Maybe I stripped off that again, and I compressed that a bit to make it fit nicer in the sound. Then I chopped off some more frequencies, saturated some more, chopped off some more frequencies over here above, and then I compressed again. So it's a constant process of add to it, remove from it, add to it, remove from it. It's a nice way to build your sound in the end, and it creates a bit of a story in and of itself, especially when you could probably, if I turn all of this off and place two different VSTs here, just one saturator and one EQ, you might just be able to reproduce that in its entirety, but this is how I usually work to get it. I also have a bit of a quieter version here. I have the rough one, I have the easy one. So that's for the progression of the track as well. So I have the hefty bass here, and I tone it down a little bit, and this is essentially just the same bass, but I band passed it. And I think the saturation at certain points is a bit tamer. So this is just a relaxing bass. And you can hear the difference, like here you have it a bit more energetic. And then here you tone it down. And then I bring it back over there as well. So that's the drums and the bass. I have a lot of ambient work, and like I said, a lot of that is just the original work on that. I think I have it till here. So that's also the track itself. This vocal effects. I used all this just to build presence. Actually, I think this one is mine. Because I had, what is this? Is this the bounce? Right, so what I did is I grabbed the intro melody here. so just these things from the intro. I put a lot of reverb on that on a separate track. Then I bounce that to audio, and then I use that to create some nice atmospheric tails. So you have over here, when the drop hits, you get this. Which is just a nice little callback in and of itself to your composition. It creates a very, very chill presence when you kind of fade it in right after the drop. It's like opening the world up for the track a little bit. So you get the impact of the drums and the bass, and then after the impact, you see the atmosphere open up to itself. I almost forgot. I mean, it's pretty clear, right? I did a low pass drum intro automation filter upwards here. I was talking with my friend Crash Comet the other day. Like, we were kind of missing the old school drum and bass tracks where you have just a low pass drum break in the intro and it slowly builds up. It's a great way to just introduce people to the vibe, and we're sad it's not used too much anymore, so I put it in here. It's a great way to yeah, it works.
And I've been chasing sunrises.
So it works to slowly build up that vibe. Let's see here. I have little tidbits here and there for the melodies. I think, oh, this is a cool one. Yeah, so for the melodic section, you have these plugs in the original, which is just, I love those. Those are great. That's this one. That's that. And I took that and I sort of made it a part of the impact, because I really like that touch. So I layered it, I grabbed it, I reverbed it a lot, I think, yeah. I pitched it up, so I have two separate ones. Then I layered it with some VST violins pizzicato, which means just the plugs. That one, and that one is pretty heavy, but when you layer all those together, you get this very nice impact right before the drop. So that's so that, I thought that was pretty cool. I really like the plugs in the original track, so I definitely wanted to use those. Then I have the vocal here playing throughout the track, with sort of the main hook playing throughout the first drop. Then I mellow the first drop down a little bit, so I have just the first drop going like this. Oh yeah, I could also talk about the white noise here, but it's white noise, you know what it does. Moves it down, moves it up. I tend to not be too diligent here, but I use a lot of melodic processing to keep it, to layer with those and keep it going, keep it moving. So for example, like what I said here, this freeze, which moves it up right in the beginning of the drop, it bundles well with this, I think this is just a drum hit with reverb and bandpass. But right, you have this section. I think I took bits of the original piano as well. What's this? Right. So, like I mentioned before, when I had the when I went like this, I wanted to accentuate that chord change a bit more, so I layered it with some groovy organs here. I think I did that for the piano as well over here. It's just a nice little extra touch in there, so when the bass moves up, you get a bit of touch there. So it's a nice phrase ender as well. And then you move here, you have the two plugs again, I think. which is a nice way to introduce a bit of a phrase change here. I think this is just a reversed drum break which moves up again. Yeah, just the cool stuff, you know, reverse your breaks, it's always nice. Creates a bit of the DJ vibe again where people rewind it and stuff. Just little touches. Then I have the piano playing some basic chords. I have the organ playing some chords. This is a machine organ here. Along with the vocal. And then I have this extra orgle, which is, I think, a bit... Yeah, it's definitely a bit rougher, but it works really nice to fill up the... And I have the piano bits here. That's a sample from the original. I think I also have this section here where I just this. So I like to reintroduce those in a remix. Keeps the track a bit familiar. You want it to reminisce of the original, not just entirely be its own thing. Otherwise, it's not a remix, of course. So I edited bits here and there, and then at this section, I thought it might be nice to reintroduce the piano stuff I had going here. The up moving chords over there might be nice. So what I did is I built a one phrase in this section where the bass and the piano actually plays. I lost it. There it is. Where they actually play the that section again. So it sounds a bit like this. I'll mute the drums for this.
Light up the sky.
I watched seas glittering down 10,000 feet.
So that's also a pretty cool transition. I muted the drums here a lot as well.
I watched seas.
And then I reintroduced the original, the very first energy back, and I added the mallets back in there as well.
10,000 feet.
This is my personal favorite part of the track because I like to do a lot of call and response, and I introduced these ding, 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 ding. I introduced those in the intro. I always like to call those back as a motive, so you hear it back again. And by having it reintroduced, the main drop where everything is nice and open and airy again, along with a pretty cool old school vocal sample, which I tried to make those a bit into the track here and there. Yeah, this is in my opinion where the track flows best. I have the pling plong over here, the violin plugs together with this. So this is where the movement is at its best in my opinion. And then what I do then is from here on out I build the drums off. So I was pretty proud of myself here. That's stupid, but you know, I had the heartbeat drums there in the intro. And so what I did here is I tend to like doing sort of a reverb build off. So I had the two kicks in the intro, and I heartbeat those again, and then I reintroduce I reintroduced the heartbeat kicks over there again. So what I did here is, you see me introduce these chords, and these are actually these are the chords from the original. So from the original Inmost track. So I do a bit of an outro where I use the original chord progression for Glimmer, and I also complement that with the vocal again there.
I caught a glimmer.
And then to top all of it off, I reintroduce back the breakdown rising chords again in the outro. So in the final, very final last bit, you can hear this.
Catch the light. Trying to catch the light. Trying to catch the light.
Right, and that's how I like to build my musical progression. So I introduce a motive, I switch it around to do a tiny call here in the middle, and then I call it back in sort of this final musical overture in the outro. And my final chord is a bit of a a tension hanger. It's sort of a cliffhanger essentially musically. I wanted to be a bit creative with the outro here as well. So what I did is I went back to that A sharp, and I moved around the mallets and the pling and the plucks and stuff to make them still fit, and I ended it on that note essentially, and then it fades out and it has the ambience here in the back, kind of accentuating the end of the track. So yeah, that was my remix. A lot of musical stuff, just always fun to go a bit wild on the piano and grab a cool idea, make it sort of your own. It's a really very nice track to build on because the guys at Inmost, they've given a lot of samples here and there, and they actually built their compositional tracks very, very deeply, so you can find a lot of this cool elements to work with and try to make your own stuff on it. I think they also write a lot of VST based instruments themselves, so that's one of the best ways to kind of do your own thing musically if you're not that limited by sampling and stuff. I tend to write a lot of musical stuff from VSTs and myself, and that's just one of that's for me it's the best part of making music essentially, just when you get to write it yourself. But yeah, that was my remix, guys. Hope you enjoyed, and I hope you're enjoying the new release by Inmost on Soulvent, and I'll talk to you later. Cheers.